Hello everyone, my name is Brian Alderman, and today I'd like to speak to you about the process of splitting beehives to keep your apiary growing. An apiary is just a technical name for a bee yard. It's a place where a beekeeper keeps his hives. There are many aspects to raising bees and producing honey, but today I'd like to specifically focus on the splitting of beehives, which is a procedure the beekeepers have used since the beginning of the modern era. The splitting of hives is not as brutal as it sounds. Actually, it's very beneficial for the bees. Splitting hives not only gives you two hives where there were one, but it keeps the bees from overcrowding and swarming. It also increases honey production and keeps the bees healthy. During the wintertime, beehives are stripped down to just the two brood boxes. This is two square boxes holding 8 to 10 frames, or devices that hold the wax or the honeycomb in place for a modern beehive to keep the bees warm. Bees produce their own heat and energy, and the smaller the facility they're in, the easier it is for them to make it through the winter. Some beekeepers will wrap their bees in like an outer wrap to keep them warm through the winter, but most will just leave them to the elements, and most times they will make it through just fine. The splitting of the hives, or splitting of the beehives, happens in early to mid-May. Usually the bees still need to be fed at this time because there's not enough flowers and area for them to get nectar and pollen. What generally happens is during the spring the beekeeper will put honey supers on top of the hives. This is an area where the bees will collect and produce honey and store it for extraction later by the beekeeper. What happens is we break down the hive, the two brood boxes, and we remove 2 to 3 frames of brood from the hive, and we put it into what we call a nook. This is just a small box that will only maintain 3, at the most 4 frames. We'll put those side by side, and the new box will be queenless at this time. Worker bees will come in and out, and we'll either insert a purchased queen, or we will allow the queen to, will remove a brood with, or a piece of brood with a fertilized queen being raised in it. Either way, both are very effective. Obviously the more foolproof method is to purchase the queen and insert it into the hive. After about 7 to 13 days, the beekeeper will move the nook. At this time it'll be a developed small hive, and put it into a regular hive body or 2-box brood chamber, and it'll be ready for honey production for that summer. It'll still be fed. Beekeepers use a mixture of sugar and water, usually with terramycin, which is a form of antibiotic for bees. It keeps them from developing a disease called foul brood, much like the common cold in humans. Doesn't affect the honey, it just affects production. The bees aren't able to work as hard or as efficient as they normally would. Basically now, where you had one hive, you now have 2 fully functional hives. This increases the beekeeper's honey production, his bottom line. Back to one of the other reasons for splitting hives. We don't want the bees to swarm. When bees become overcrowded, especially in the spring when they're down to a 2-box brood chamber, they'll be overcrowded and the bees will leave. One of the reasons for leaving is the queen will lay eggs throughout the brood box. Some of the eggs will be populated in the cell with a substance called royal jelly. Royal jelly is how the larvae eats and becomes a queen. Basically, it's survival of the fittest. The first queen that emerges will sting through the caps, the wax caps, of the other queen cells, killing them. And then the old queen and the new queen will fight, and the old queen or new queen will leave with a mass of worker bees. They'll fly into a tree, a house, branches. Normally the swarm doesn't last very long. Either it's captured by another beekeeper, or it dies because of being loose into the elements. No protection from the rain or the cold. It's very hard to keep a swarm warm when they don't have any outer covering. The bees make a mass or a ball, and they move from tree limb to tree limb, and you'll see them in like a dark cloud flying over. But they usually will perish. The hive where they left will also normally perish because of its diminished workforce. It doesn't have the ability to keep the hive warm or to produce honey, even enough honey for it to survive. So this is one of the other reasons why beekeepers split hives. Overall, splitting of the beehives is something that's happened for, like I said, since the modern era. It's just another mechanism the beekeepers use to produce honey. We sometimes take for granted all the work and effort that's put in to raising bees to get the honey to our table. Being raised on a farm, we raised honeybees. My grandfather ran over 2,000 colonies at any given time, along with our dairy farm. So I've been very well educated by him in the aspects of beekeeping. So in closing, I'd just like to say that splitting of the beehive is a beneficial portion of keeping bees. It helps to allow higher production of honey. It keeps the bees safe and healthy, and keeps everyone in honey, basically. Thank you very much for taking time to listen to my speech, and have a wonderful evening.